Hey guys, Ben Paint here, and today we're back once again for another video, and this time we are taking on our second continuous event of the day. So if you haven't watched the first video, we are taking on the fourth round of the SRK Championship at Formula Fast. Now this, as I said, is a continuation from the third round. This recorded on the same day, same time. However, this round is in the afternoon instead of the morning. It's exactly the same format, 2 heats and then a final race. Obviously, in the last round, we sort of had a couple of mistakes. We sort of accidentally pitted a lap too late, which caused us to finish in last place. And then in the final, we had a little bit of a tussle on the first lap, which meant to me losing 2 positions back down to where I started from. But it's not the end of the world. We're hoping that we can improve on that this round. So let's jump straight into the heats and see how we get on this afternoon. Okay then guys, so we're going to jump straight into heat 1 of round 4 of the SRK Championship. This is a direct continuation of the third round, which I posted a couple of days ago. So we're about to get underway, and before we get into the footage, I forgot to mention, the pretty boy forgot to mention, if you are new here, could you please hit the subscribe button down below, and if you do enjoy this video, can you also hit the like button. However, we do get underway under the green flags, and we're starting this one in second place, and once again we're behind Charlie Summers in this one. So we're trying to get our way past as quickly as we can, try and forge our way forward, because I thought in this one, if I could get away quickly, I'd be able to escape a bit, as I knew from the first heat that I had a little bit more pace than Charlie. However, we have James Dowden down the inside there, and I thought I'd reply straight away by diving straight down the inside on the hairpin and retaking my position back up into second place. Now the person in first and the person in third are both SRK1 drivers, so once again surrounded by very competitive drivers, very quick drivers, and we're also competing on the normal layout for Formula Fast. It's the layout that is used during the BRKC, which is a really good competition. I'd love to take part in it in the future, maybe even next year when it comes around. We'll see how things go. But jumping back into the footage, we are coming around on our second lap here, still in second place, following around Charlie and trying to close the gap up ahead. Now our fastest lap so far is a 31.627, and we've immediately dropped that down straight away to a 30.874. So some pretty decent lap times here. A pretty reasonable lap time here is in the 29-second lap, so we're trying to get down to that as quickly as we can and try and put in some pretty quick and consistent laps. Now, as I mentioned in the first video, my fastest lap here on the night before when I did some practice was a 29.9. So if I could get anywhere around here during the racing, then I knew that I would be on for some really solid pace. So you can see getting held up a little bit here, trying to get past Charlie, but not really able to find the room. And you can see he's holding us up a little bit from staying in the middle of the track, driving quite defensively, which rather than sticking out quite long, which I mentioned in the first video, the last video for round 3, if you're at the front, you usually want to stay out a little bit longer. But unfortunately here, I sort of made that executive decision to sort of stay out long because I was at the front. But this was a little bit detrimental to myself. As you can see, I'm just getting held up. The lap times aren't really that quick. Obviously, a pretty decent lap time is a low 30 at least. So we're going and staying up in the high 30s to 30.828 again as we come across our line, and really stuck up behind Charlie here, not really being able to find our way past so far. So we're just sort of being held up, and it's just sort of costing us time to people behind. You can see here, a nice gap opens up. I go for a really big dive bomb, but unfortunately I didn't think it was that clean, so I let him back through into first place. I probably should have just stuck it out and taken the penalty and sort of tried to race off, but instead I let him back through, and I knew at this point, as you can see, we come across the line, a 32-second lap this time round, that he was going to drive even more defensively here. And you can see how slow he is through the Snell section, and it's really costing me a lot of time in this heat. I knew that some of the drivers behind me were now dropping into the pits, and obviously they were going to get the run on me from having that clean air ahead of them. So again, just sort of tucked in behind, goes really wide here, but I just can't really find a way past, getting tagged from behind here. So I'm still stuck up behind Charlie here. I probably should have dipped into the pits, but this is all decision making that we're learning from myself, from re-watching the videos and commentating over it, and hopefully it's helping out some of you guys as well. We can see again, trying to go up the inside here. I try and go for a bit of a move, but just not quite getting the run on him, and he closes the door off quite well. I have a little bit of a side tap there, and again that leads to me staying down in second and actually losing my momentum coming into the fastest part of the track. But you can see again, I've really closed up again into the hairpin there, and instead of following him around now, I decided to dip into the pits. I finally used my brain a little bit and hope that I can get a better pit stop compared to the first 2 rounds where I was really going quite slowly. So quite a clean pit stop there, and we come out unfortunately in 6th position. So we've lost 4 places so far, and we've definitely lost at least 2 to Aiden and James up ahead, as I know that they pit up ahead of me. But then we see out of nowhere a complete dive bomb from Sam Shaw, who completely wiped me out there, and Peyton capitalised on it and moves up into 7th place. Now, I had no idea what sort of move Sam was going for there. Obviously, he's done BRKC before, and he'd come along, he knows the track quite well, and he's just come out of absolute nowhere. You can't quite see him on the footage, but he absolutely wipes me out and makes me lose another position, which I was quite frustrated with at the time, but I knew that this heat was already a little bit wrapped up for me. So at this point I wasn't too mad. I didn't want to let my head drop. I just thought if I can carry on and push on, I could try and catch back up to Peyton, who's up ahead of me. So just trying to put in the best laps that I possibly can now at this point, and just try and catch up to him. So you can see there's quite a big gap now from being spun out and losing all that momentum. Obviously our last lap there, 34-second lap, so about 3.5 to 4 seconds slower. So I knew that that was a really bad lap from being taken out. But with the clean air up ahead and actually having the space to work, you see we dropped our fastest lap time down by at least half a second to a 30.354 now. So getting back into the rhythm of things again, I'm really trying to chase down Peyton up ahead. So you can see just trying to stay tight as possible to the barriers down the left hand side. You can see Peyton is now catching up to Charlie, who is in 5th position. So Charlie really didn't have the pace in this one either. As you can see, after his pit stops, he's also been jumped by James and Aiden. So I knew that if I had a little bit more pace in me and I didn't get taken out as much as I did, I probably would have jumped him through the pit stop. But unfortunately, you can see there, once again, coming across the line with a faster lap, 30.244, which I was really happy with, and I knew that I was beginning to sort of warm up now at this point. Obviously, I understood the track. I've been here once before this weekend. I came up and did a little bit of practice in December. I don't know if you guys have checked out that video. And then obviously I came up the night before, so I knew the track reasonably well. You see Oliver Payne in the pits there, and we move up once again into 6th position. Our fastest lap of the race so far, 30.220, and Peyton and Charlie up ahead, really starting to run away. But you can see on the right hand side here, it does say pit board, or pit is closing. We have recognised it this time. If you don't know what I'm on about, go ahead and check out the round 3 video. So we realise now at this point that it's coming towards the end of the race, so I really have to push the car to its limits. You can see I'm really trying to push it as much as I can. We can see Ben Frankham's come out of the pits now, battling with Peyton, so I knew that if I could reel them in together, I might be able to make a move going into the hairpins. Now at this point we've really closed up behind them. Unfortunately, I'm still a little bit too far away to go for any sort of move into the hairpin, so I'm just having to sit back and sort of accept my fate in 6th position. And 6th position is still a pretty decent place for someone in SRK2, but I knew I had the pace to sort of finish a little bit higher up, especially starting the race in 2nd position. So we're coming around here on the last lap of the lap, the last corner of the lap, and we come across the line on this lap with our fastest lap so far, a 30.202 second lap. And now we're really on the bumper of Peyton there, giving him a little bit of a tap, looking for the inside here, but unfortunately I just had to back out as I didn't think my kart would squeeze through, and you can see how much momentum that's lost me going into the fastest part of the track, as I mentioned once again. So all the pace and time that I'd made up, I just sort of lost it by having to lift off a little bit there and hit the brakes just to make sure I didn't take Peyton out. So we come around the last corner once again on this lap to finish and come across the line with a 31.312. So obviously, due to losing all that momentum, you can see it's actually cost me a whole second, which really you wouldn't think it is that bad, but any little mistakes you make or small losses you make really do add up on this track to make you lose a lot of time. And you can see here Peyton's looking over his shoulder, but I am really far behind him at this point, so not really any threat to him now at this point. You can see the flares going up on the left hand side, so I knew that this was the last lap of the race. We come round here and we do finish in 6th position with another lap of a 30.216, which did mean that I was being quite consistent with my lap times, but unfortunately it wasn't quite quick enough to catch up to Peyton up ahead of me. So that does in fact bring us to the end of the first heat. Let's then jump into the second one and see how we get on. Okay then guys, so we're jumping straight into the second heat here. You can see up ahead of us is Sam Slater, so we knew that we were on for a tough race here. I believe we were starting very close to the back. Obviously we started in second place in the first heat, so to correspond with this we were starting in 9th place in this one, which is obviously a very tall order, but we're just going to do our best and see how many places we can make up. Obviously 6th place in our first heat wasn't the best result, but still a pretty decent one. We still have the chance at a C final if we can get somewhere in the mid pack of the drivers. So we're going to go underway here under the green flags. Obviously starting in the back, you are a bit of detriment to the first corner trying to wrap around it. So we are in 9th place as it says there, and now we're just going to try and make as many moves as we possibly can to force our way through the field and just try and collect as many points as we can. So up behind Sam here, who was in kart 14, which to my surprise hadn't actually been used a lot. So you can see he's going quite slow here and the gap's opened up the inside, and I thought, well, there's not a lot of opportunity to do this, so I just slid up the inside there into 8th place and actually got the move done on him, which I was really happy with. So now we've made a position quite early, and we actually began to make a little bit of a gap to him as well. Obviously I mentioned that I think his kart was quite cold and it began to warm up as the session went on, so I knew that I had to make some moves forward and sort of escape him if I possibly could. So we're up behind James Wiltshire here, and team member as always Barry Lewis up ahead in 6th place, sort of holding up James a little bit here. So James looking down the inside, not quite making it work, and obviously trying to battle with him. He was losing a bit of time. He raised his hand here to sort of dip into the pits, so now I was up into 7th place. So I was really happy with it. I looked over my shoulder and to my surprise I didn't realise that Sam actually was a little bit of a gap behind me. I thought he'd be right up my chuff at this point. So getting that corner a little bit wrong now through the Snell section, losing a little bit of momentum, getting a bit excited as we have gained 2 positions so far, but we just need to get our head down and put in some very fast lap times. Obviously, like I said, the closer we can get to that 29-second mark, the better we're going to be. So you can see we're really closing up to Barry here. He's taking some slower lines than me, getting the kart a little bit wayward, and you can see I'm giving him a little tap there through the last corner. He looks over his shoulder and goes quite wide here, and I'm able to nip down the inside there and get up into 6th place. You can see our last lap was a 30.412, and now we have a little bit of clean air up ahead of us to try and forge our way towards the guys in the top 5. So I was quite happy to have this space. Obviously you don't get a lot of space on this track, so you can see they're all fighting with each other up in the top 3 positions, and also 4th and 5th are quite closely up behind as well. So you can see Ethan there goes into the pits, and I've gained up into 5th place, and we come across the line on this lap with a 30.623, which isn't our fastest lap, but it's still a pretty consistent one. So obviously not too happy with that one. We want to get a bit lower down, especially as we have a lot of clean air and a pretty, I will be honest, this kart did feel really squishy in the seat. Now I found with kart 13, this is the one kart I had a complaint about all day. I just couldn't move the seat back very far, and this meant that I felt really hunched over the wheel, felt quite uncomfortable, but you've just got to work with what you have. So we were just trying to plough on and catch up to the guys ahead. You can see they're all starting to battle now, and we are still in 5th position. So here we go, you can see up ahead we have another driver, and then we have Matt Borrell and Ollie Payne. So I knew that if I could catch up to these guys, then I was doing pretty well, especially starting in 9th position, which is 1 position from the back of the grid. So we're still pounding around here with a lot of clean air up ahead, so we're just trying to get the laps in, be consistent as we can, trying to minimise the track length once again, losing a little bit of the back end there on the exit of the corner, and you can see the driver there up ahead dips into the pits. Now we're up into 4th place, and we come across the line on this lap with 30.422, and obviously, as I said, we lost a little bit of the back end there. But now we are up behind teammate Matthew Borrell, who actually started quite high up, and we have actually managed to catch up with him now at this point, and Ollie Payne's obviously holding him up quite well to keep that 2nd place so far. So we're in 4th and really happy with this. Obviously the drivers ahead still haven't pit either, so I've made this position on pure pace alone, which I was really happy with, and I just decided that I didn't really want to battle with those guys up ahead. Now I'm going to give you a bit of viewer discretion here, as there is going to be some foul language. You can see here, I'm just going to talk quite loudly, but yeah, we did in fact get a yellow light on the first pit stop, so all of the progress I made there unfortunately was just in vain. Even if I did manage to get that pit stop correct, I did just pit at the wrong time. As you can see, I've been jumped once again by 3 drivers back down to 7th place, and I wasn't too happy about this at all. Really my own mistake here. I was on for some decent points in this one, obviously behind Sam once again. You can see how much overspeed my kart has, and he makes a really good lunge there on Ethan. So I knew at this point I was coming back into the pit, so I let James through, who was behind me, and I dip into the pits for the 2nd time this race. So sort of the foreshadowing that I said in the 3rd round video, where the pit stops were going to be my detriment in both rounds. Now they have in fact been my detriment. As you can see, I'm down in 10th place, and really not too happy with my performance. However, this was now an opportunity to really not get my head down too much and just try and put in some really quick laps and try and show to myself that I had some good pace. Obviously complain to myself a little bit there, as I think anyone would, by messing that up. So we're now down in 10th place and we're ready now to start a decent lap and just try and set up. Obviously I was just trying to shake it out of my head that this heat was pretty much a throwaway heat now at this rate, so both rounds pretty much the same sort of place, going to be starting in the E final, which is really annoying. But now we're just going to try and push the car to its absolute limit and just try and do the best that I can. Obviously as an SRK2 driver I don't expect to get blistering fastest laps, but I was just going to try and do my best to get close. So you can see here now a few yellow lights there, which I was quite confused about. I didn't know if someone had been taken out, and actually to my surprise Ollie had been sort of spun into the barriers. Now that's not the last we're going to be seeing of Ollie by the end of the heat. He's that far ahead, but immediately the pace was set in a 30.101, our fastest lap so far on this day, and I was really happy with this. I really just wanted to get my head down and show to myself that I did have the pace to sort of be battling with other people and not be too disheartened by sort of the events that have happened in this afternoon as well as this morning. So we're pounding down into the back straight here, into the hairpin, really just trying to maintain my momentum as much as I can, tucking in on the right hand side to flick the car into the left and try and be as smooth as possible. We come across the line on this lap with a 30.460, so not as fast as our last lap, but still a pretty respectable time. You can see the gap to Ollie up ahead is really beginning to close. Now I didn't really expect this with only a few laps left, but I was actually beginning to reel him in, and I think my 30.101 at this point was in fact the fastest lap of the race. So I actually realised that I did have some really good pace, especially with some really good SRK1 drivers on the grid. So I realised that I did have some really good pace, but just unfortunately the cards really haven't been thrown my way. You can see again, even though I'm not getting that decent of a lap time, I'm really starting to close up to Ollie up ahead here. He's really starting to get a lot bigger in my camera. So I thought to myself, maybe 9th place could be on the cards here. But you can see Pitt's closing on the right hand side. So in my head, I didn't really think I'd be able to catch up with him, but I was going to try my best to just get as close as I could to him and try and make a pass if I can. You see it takes a really unconventional line now, and it's really allowed me to tag onto the back of him. And now at this point I really thought to myself that I have a big opportunity here if he makes another mistake to really capitalise on it. And you can see once again, fastest lap so far today, 30.089, really getting close to those 29-second laps now at this point, which I was really happy with, and we're really starting to reel Ollie in. We're really tagging along onto the back of him, and we're looking for a move now if we can, but you can see he's looking over his shoulder, going quite defensive, so I didn't want to go for one just yet, as I knew that the end was coming, not just yet but in a couple of laps. So I was really tagging along behind him here, trying to get as close as I could without making any contact, losing a little bit of time there, and this means that obviously my lap was a little bit slower, 30.501, so trying to keep things a little bit exciting for you guys, even though we are down battling for the short straw. He goes a little bit wayward there, I go straight into the back of him, didn't mean that at all. Just carried a bit more momentum. You can see we're right on the back of him here, so if an opportunity opens up I'm going to go for the move. He goes really narrow here, so I didn't really think about it. I look for the inside, go back to the outside, he hits the wall and I go straight into the back of him. I didn't really expect that at all, but unfortunately I just went completely unavoidable. I didn't expect him to go into the barrier, and you can see him come across the line. I asked him if he was alright here, but you can see he was in a bit of discomfort unfortunately. So we did just have a little bit of a bad round once again. Down in 10th place, see having a bit of a solemn return to the pits here, so not the best set of heats. However, let's jump into some post-heat thoughts. Okay then guys, so we've just finished our 2 heats from round 4. As you can see, finishing in about 6th position in the first race, and unfortunately due to that pit stop we have finished in last place in the 2nd heat. So really not the best couple of rounds here. We had the potential to have some really good rounds and finish up near the top of the class, but unfortunately we seem to find ourselves once again down near the bottom. So just a few more learning points to take. I'm going to keep saying this every single round because apparently things keep seeming to go wrong. So a nice few learning points to take from it, and hopefully we'll see what final we're in and hopefully do a lot better in the final coming up now. Here we are then, jumping straight into the E final. Once again down here in a place we don't really want to be, and much akin to our 3rd round, we are in the E-final, as I mentioned, but we are in 9th place, just like our second heat. So I knew if I had any sort of result coming out here, it was going to have to be a real hard struggle. And what you're about to watch is probably one of my favourite heats that I've done in SRK this year. So sit back, relax and enjoy the show. So we're starting down in 9th, as I mentioned, coming into the first corner here, all over the back of the person ahead, and there's absolute carnage up ahead. Everyone's all over the place and everyone just seems to part like the Red Sea there. Straight up into 6th place, 3 positions gained in one corner. Was absolutely loving life at this point. I had a huge grin on my face, and now I knew I had a little bit of time and space to catch up to the other guys up ahead. I knew on paper that I had more pace than the people in this final, as I just got a bit unlucky with myself, really making a few mistakes with that pit stop and obviously getting taken out. So I knew that everything was to play for now, and I was really on the hunt now as I was up into 6th place and not really stuck near the back. So we're up into 6th, really bearing down on the person in 5th here in car number 20, staying nice and tight to the curb, as I mentioned, and really getting it all over the back, looking for the move but deciding against it, going a little bit wayward there, locking up the brakes. And I was deciding in my head whether I should go into the pits at this point, but I thought I'd go a little bit longer as I was now in the middle, and I thought there was an opportunity for some overtakes. So here we are then, tucking up behind number 20 once again. He was quite defensive here, or maybe that was just his driving line, but we're really trying to push our way through and get a better run coming down to the fastest part of the track. You see him looking all over his shoulder, he knows he's under pressure, and I just stick the car to the inside here. He sort of covers it off, so I stick back to the racing line to try and look for another way round. Obviously getting a bit stuck there, he parks it on the apex. I think he just sort of dips into the pits there, which I didn't really expect, but it's happy days for me as it gives me a little bit more breathing room to try and catch up to the top 4 guys. Obviously you can see I was getting held up there, 31.220 my last lap. So once again you can see in the space of about 2 or 3 corners we have actually managed to reel in the guys in the top 4. You can see Hagen, my teammate in SRK1, he's in 3rd place here. So if I catch up to him, I felt that I was on some really good pace, almost absolutely murdering the person in kart number 19, but luckily I was able to avoid it. And instead of sort of being held up, I decided to dip into the pits here and try and hope for a little bit of clean air. And this was probably one of my best pit stops of the day as well, just trying to keep it clean, making sure I didn't replicate anything that happened in the second heat. You can see there on the left hand side, that was the gap I sort of made to the person that pit ahead of me. So I gained about 2 or 3 seconds there through the pit stop and the lap that I sort of took. So I was really happy with that, and now I saw that I'd only lost 1 position down into 6th, and now it was time to sort of put the power down, put the pace on, and just try and get ahead of people that were going to be pitting later in the pit stop. Obviously I was fastest man on track at this point with the fastest lap of the heat in with 30.532, which isn't the best lap, and I knew that I had more to come. You can see the driver there that was ahead of me, I've now jumped in through the pit stops, even though I didn't have the best lap. So I was up into 5th once again, back to where I was before I completed my pit stop. So I knew that there was another free position up for grabs for sure, because someone behind me would have still had to pit, and I didn't think that they had that much pace. I was beginning to catch the drivers that were up ahead. You can see at the moment no one is in sight, so I knew that everyone must be beginning to drop into the pits. So just trying to put the pace down, trying to force myself forward as much as I can. We come around here, you can see a driver in the pits, and we come into 4th position. The driver up ahead is Shane Lucas, who started this heat on pole position. So in my head now at this point, I was in fact in a net P2. So I was really happy with this. My fastest lap of the race so far, 30.152. You can see Shane trying to escape with some bunny hops here. And one thing I did notice pretty quickly is his car had a little bit more top end speed compared to mine, so it was going to be really difficult to make any sort of move into that big hairpin section after the fastest part of the lap. And you can see there, you can see the 2 drivers up ahead, Hagen and the driver in 1st place, so I knew that they were still sort of battling for 1st and 2nd out at this point, and I didn't really want to get stuck behind Shane at this point. You can see he's sort of beginning to hold me up. I try and look for once again that move down the inside, but I didn't quite have the momentum unfortunately, which meant I had to slot behind him and lose a little bit of my own momentum, which obviously, due to having a slower car anyway, this was never going to be a good combination. So coming into the hairpin once again, you can see pretty much pushing him through the corner. I've gained so much time through that hairpin and pushing him through this whole last section here, not quite making contact, but it looks like I'm absolutely forced him through. You can see a pretty slow lap there, 30.799. We have actually managed to gain another position through pit stops. I think that was Hagen that went into the pits, so now we're up into 3rd place, onto the podium from 9th position, which I was really happy with. Showing some really good pace, gained 6 positions so far, and I was still looking for more. I was hoping to get past Shane, at least have 2nd place if I could. You see he goes really wide there, sort of hampers my own line and my momentum, trying to force my way back in the actual seat of the car to try and push forward once again. And we come across the line, you can see how much time I lost there, a 31.318, which is over a second slower than our fastest lap so far. So having that little bit of a gap really meant that I could hold my momentum here and take my own lines rather than being stuck up behind Shane here. So I knew that this was once again going to be a pretty decent lap if I could hook it up correctly. So coming down this back section here, once again we still haven't seen sight of the person in 1st place, so they're still yet to do a pit stop, and I believe that they're still pounding around in 1st. So I didn't want to be sitting behind Shane for too long, because this could give that person an advantage to sort of overcut us in the pits. But we come across the line this lap at 30.686, so still not a fast lap so far. We haven't really gained a lot of time on Shane on that lap, so making a few mistakes there, and this allowed him to sort of preserve the gap. You can see him bunny hopping once again, trying to get away, but I think he's doing that and it's actually distracting him from driving properly, because I managed to actually reel him in quite a lot there through that little sweeping corner. And again, he goes really wide into the hairpin, and this allows me to pretty much get up right behind him once again. He gained all the time that I'd lost from losing that momentum earlier in the race. And again, come across the line pretty consistent at 30.524 second lap, which I was really happy with. And again, pretty much pushing Shane now through the Snell section, trying to stay a little bit wider just so I can maintain the momentum. Obviously, as I said, his kart was a little bit quicker than mine, so I thought by taking a wider line my kart would get up to power a little bit better. But unfortunately, you can see he's pulling away here, so I was thinking about a move down the inside to side against it as he turned in quite well. And unfortunately I just bumped into the back of him there on the exit of the corner, and again that caused me to lose a lot of momentum to him, but I'm able to gain it back through the last corner, and we come across the line with a 30.815. and obviously with that little bit of contact, I in fact did get a little warning for it, but I don't see how it really affected him in any way. If anything, it sort of aided him. So as you can see though in the bottom right, we have moved up into 2nd place through pit stops, which I'm really happy with. So now at this point I knew I was racing for the race lead, and I think Shane knew that as well, so he's trying to drive a little bit more defensive now at this point, but I was determined in my power to get past him as much and as quickly as I could. So you can see once again here, coming across the line at 30.564, trying to go tight once again to look for the inside. Unfortunately didn't quite have the bottle to sort of go for it without making contact, so still sit behind him, biding my time. Obviously, as I mentioned in the last video, the finals are a little bit longer, so I knew that I had a little bit of time to sort of force him into a mistake, wait for him to sort of mess up a little bit, and then I was going to try and nip down the inside if I could. Again, sort of doing the same thing as I did earlier, carrying a bit too much momentum as he's going a bit slower into that last corner, and it causes me to bump him sort of forward and give him a little bit of the time. You can see here though, I got a little bit wider here to hook me up the inside line. A perfect move down the inside there, and sort of my waiting paid off. I knew that he was going really wide into that corner. He wouldn't have expected to move down the inside, and that gave me 1st place. So we've gone from 9th to 1st in this one, and now at this point, spoilers, we did actually just completely run off into the distance and just sort of create at least a 3 or 4 second gap, which I was really happy with. And I was just really happy to be able to just show my true potential in this race rather than being stuck down near the back or mid-pack. So we're up into 1st now, just trying to get as tight as possible to the barriers as I can to minimise the track length, as I absolute champion is a really key point in indoor karting especially. See on the right hand side there it said pits closing, so I knew I made that move at the correct time as we're coming to the latter stages of the race. Now you can see without Shane in front of me, I'm able to really hook up that last hairpin a lot better and really carry a lot more momentum through the corner, and this leads to me coming across the line with my fastest lap so far in this final, a 30.131 second lap. Now I was really determined to try and beat my time from the second heat, so I was really just trying to push the kart now into going as fast as it could. You see me looking over my shoulder there, and to my surprise, I mentioned I just had such a big gap now at this point already that I didn't really expect. So now we are sort of drifting around the corner again, just locking up the brakes a little bit too much, losing a little bit of momentum, but we are now coming through into the last corner here and coming across the line with a 30.404, so losing a little bit of time here on that lap, but now we're coming through into the next lap of the final, which I believe was the last lap of the race. I could be completely confused there, but we're coming around here just trying to stay as tight as possible to the barriers once again, trying to really force the throttle into the floor as much as I can, going as wide as I can here to try and carry the momentum into the hairpin, trying to take a late apex, going a little bit wide to carry the momentum, and then staying tight again once more into the sweeping right-hander. Again, same with the left-hand corner, and we come round. It wasn't in fact the last lap, but it was a 30.145, which is really consistent with my fastest lap so far. And again, I was just trying to push the car as much as I could to try and get the best lap time as I could. As I said, I wanted to try and get into those 29-second lap times if I could. So let's see if I can by the end of this lap. Getting really tight to corners here. You can see up ahead we have Jeff Fricker, I believe that is, who's in 10th place. He had a little bit of a poor run in this one, so we're actually catching up to him quite a bit here and maybe even going for a lap on him, but we do come across the line to the flares with a final lap time of 30.069. So really happy with that one. Really enjoyed that race. Like I said, it was one of my best races of the year in terms of heats, which I was really happy with, and I was just really exhilarated at this point that I was able to show my true ability. So with that all dusted, let's get into some post-race thoughts. Okay then guys, so that wraps up the end of today. We went from 9th to 1st in the E final. I showed really good pace there. I was up about 4 attempts compared to anyone else in the race. I thought I did a great job of sort of pitting when I did, finding myself a bit of clean air and just trying to get as far ahead of the others as possible. Well, Shane Lucas came out in front of me and obviously he started the race in 1st place, so the fact I was able to go from 9th up to him alone was good enough, and then I was able to make the move on him and able to take 1st place in that race, which I was really happy with, and I think it was a good way to end out a pretty abysmal couple of rounds. However, this does in fact bring us to the end of the video, so I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, can you please leave a like down below, and if you are new here, could you also hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. I've got a lot of videos coming in the future. In 2 weeks we're off to Buckmore Park for the 4th round of the Club 73 weekend series, so stay tuned to that. We're going to have, this is obviously the 2nd part of the video that I've made from this event, so as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.